You cannot outrun the past. This simple, heavy sentence was the main takeaway I got from this session, Ballad of Fallen Angels. Definitely one of the best episodes of Cowboy Bebop. I remember watching this episode for the first time and was blown away by the sheer beauty of it. The settings were beautiful and majestic, especially the pinkish, purple sky when Spike was walking to the cathedral. The cinematography perfectly encapsulates the tone of the episode, which was dark and melancholy. Furthermore, the scenes where the antagonist, Vicious, was shown were perfectly executed, for the shrieks of his cormorant were partnered with whatever terrible thing he was doing. However, the thing that cemented this episode as one of the best in the show is its plot, for even though the plot is relatively darker and pensive, it was beautifully told. This is the first episode where I realized that Cowboy Bebop contains not just bounty hunting adventures, but also darker, dismal episodes that delve into the characters' pasts, which made the show even greater, because we get a glimpse of the backstories that gives the Bebop crew more depth. In this episode, we learned a little bit more about Spike. This episode became one of my favorites because of many things, and the opening scene is one of them. For in that scene alone, two of the biggest reveals of the entire show were done. Spike's former ties with the Red Dragon Syndicate, and the first appearance of the antagonist of the show, which turns out to be Spike's former partner, Vicious. After these reveals, Spike's amazing prowess at bounty hunting, namely his hand-to-hand combat abilities, his calm and accurate marksmanship when it comes to firearms, and his adeptness at disguises and finding his target all made sense, for he was a former member of a crime syndicate. Astonishingly, the show went a different way after revealing Spike's past, which made me love Cowboy Bebop even more. For instead of expanding more on Spike's dangerous and ruthless Red Dragon career, the show focused on the relationships with the people he was close to, especially with Mao Yenrai, the person that Vicious killed in the start of the episode. When Jet confronted Spike about the bounty on Mao Yenrai's head, Spike said that he needed to repay a debt to him. That's why his mind was already set when he saw his boss's face on their bounty screen, oblivious to all of Jet's well-reasoned arguments. Seeing that face made him realize that his past has finally caught up with him. So, he immediately went to see an old colleague of his, Anastasia. I love this particular scene because it is one of the softer, quieter moments in Cowboy Bebop. In hindsight, it's as if the show has given the viewers a moment of respite before the action-packed scenes that will follow. Another reason why I love this scene is because this is the first time in the show that Spike has shown his empathetic side. Here, we see him greeting an old friend and colleague who he cares about, even being concerned with her alcohol intake, so he drank one glass to stop her from gulping the entire bottle. It is these little moments, these sincere conversations, that makes Cowboy Bebop such a complete experience. For other than the awesome music and soundtrack, funny dialogues, and amazing artwork, it also has great action and emotional scenes like this. After watching the entire episode, Spike's actions made me appreciate his character even more. For even though he has a chill and carefree nature based on the previous 4 episodes, when it comes to the important people in his life and his past, he is willing to go through hell to defend or, in this case, avenge them. Never have I seen a character so calm and collected walking into a trap, and his only reason for doing so is he has a debt to pay off. Vicious has one of the best villain entrances that I have ever seen, bombing a rival syndicate's ship, staging a coup, and mercilessly killing his former boss without a word said. And these were all done on the same day. What's amazing about his entrance was that there was no villainous music that signals his arrival, and it was still menacing. The only sound that can be heard was the reoccurring shriek of his cormorant and the slicing motion of his blade that killed Mao Yenrai. An efficient villain, which is very rare in anime. When he revealed his name later to Faye Valentine, I realized how perfect it was for him, for it truly reflected his character. The true extent of his viciousness was shown later in the episode, which was matched by the fearlessness of his former comrade, Spike. This is the scene where I realized that the show was not just another regular anime, where I completely switched my casual viewing attitude to complete awe, where Cowboy Bebop became one of, if not, the greatest anime I have ever seen. Like I mentioned in my previous video, music plays a very important part in a show, for it establishes the theme for a specific scene or episode. In this case, Cowboy Bebop masterfully demonstrates it again when Spike made his way to the church where Faye was held and Vicious was waiting for him. The liturgical music intro, the pale purple sky, and Spike's walk towards the church is one of the most beautiful scenes I have ever seen. It never fails to bring a chill down my spine every time I watch this part. The song in this scene is another genius addition by the show, because other than being the setup for the church where the showdown will take place, the lyrics perfectly matches Spike's character and mindset throughout the whole series. A man who is so consumed by his past that his present is not even worth living because, in his mind, he is already dead. I could even argue that this song is what Spike was feeling just before he went inside the church and met Vicious again. For in this episode, he acknowledged that his past has caught up to him, and now it's time to repay his debts. The song stops when he meets Vicious because he has finally confronted his past and he understands that it is time for business. Other than the song, another genius act by the writers was the setting, the church, the place where the former comrades met again. Vicious starts off by saying that the angels who fall from heaven become demons, and that is what they have become. When I heard that line, I was astounded at how it was delivered. My mind began to form a lot of connections and symbolisms as to what it means, and in a masterpiece of a show such as this, nothing is ever done randomly. So I thought about how ironic and perfect that is. Ironic because they are both a member of a crime syndicate and yet they met again in a church. And perfect because the church is just like Vicious and Spike, dilapidated and ruined, like a former angel being cast out of heaven, becoming a devil. And even though the place represents both of them, their characters have differed greatly. What's great about this episode is, even though the focus narrows down to Vicious and Spike's past, the relationship of Spike and Jet was also given some spotlight. Throughout the episode, Spike was adamant about pursuing Mao Yenrai's bounty, and Jet, being the voice of reason that he is, tells Spike to not pursue it, as it is too dangerous. When Spike does not budge and Jet finds out that he has some connection with Mao Yenrai, he becomes angry and leaves Spike on his own. Being only 5 episodes in, I think this is the first time that Spike and Jet's relationship as bounty hunters were put to the test, and this episode has executed perfectly just how strong their bond is. For while Spike is currently in a shootout, Jet accidentally cuts a long branch on one of his bonsai trees. Usually, that kind of process is normal, but the reaction that Jet had means it was an accident. Immediately after that, Faye calls Jet saying the Spike is in trouble. Realizing the reason as to why he can't focus, he went out to help Spike. This scene is another example of why I love this episode so much, and ultimately, of why I truly admire the show. For even in a high adrenaline shootout, the writers can still squeeze in those moments of bond and friendship, telling us that Spike is not alone. In the final part of the episode, after Spike unbelievably wins a shootout against all of Vicious's men, the showdown between the two rivals commences. Again, we hear the uncomfortable shriek of Vicious's cormorant, which is obviously a bad omen, because every time that sound was heard throughout the episode, something terrible happens. This time, Spike was the subject of this shriek, and Vicious strikes him from the shadows. At the end, when they were both pointing their weapons at each other, Vicious called Spike, and eventually calling himself a ravenous beast who wanders, hunting for the blood of others, acknowledging that they are the same person. In this moment, another genius piece of cinematography was executed. As Vicious was acknowledging Spike, both of them were locked in a stalemate position, physically exhibiting equality. Furthermore, they were both lit by the hazy light of the rose window, but only their silhouettes can be seen. In this exact moment, Vicious's first line comes to mind. When angels are forced out of heaven, they become devils. And this is precisely what they look like right now. The rose window is the gate of heaven, and both of them, only faintly lit by the window, were just caked out. A ballad of fallen angels personified. After Spike says to Vicious that he has bled all that blood away, he was thrown out of the rose window, and in comes one of the best montages I have ever seen. Before I proceed, I just want to say how cool and awesome Spike is for the smoothest hand grenade delivery in anime history. Even on the verge of death, he still has the self-awareness to do those kinds of things. Once again, another beautiful piece of music was utilized to emphasize the emotions and gravity of the scene. This angelic, Latin-like music perfectly complements the next few seconds, as it looks like Spike was about to die and he is seeing his life flash before his eyes. The writers could have left out the flashbacks and finished the scene with a grenade explosion, and it still would have been a great ending. Instead, they managed to create something even greater, a masterpiece combination of music and story that still remains as one of the best moments of Cowboy Bebop. I love this scene for it presents a lot of things, but the most important one is it showed us what kind of person Spike is in an amazingly short span of time. A lot of terrible things happened in his life as a member of a crime syndicate, as shown in the montage of memories. He was shot and injured, fell in love, and became heartbroken. But surprisingly, that is not the only thing Spike sees, for he also remembers some of his fonder memories with Vicious when they were still comrades. This is an interesting tell of character for Spike, because even in his supposed last moments, he still remembers the brighter memories he had with the man who just threw him off the window. In this masterpiece of a scene, I have realized that Spike is a man without hatred, only a man of action, living day by day and paying his debts. Because as he said earlier to Vicious, he is only watching a bad dream he never wakes up from. In my opinion, this scene is the manifestation of the session title Ballad of Fallen Angels, for it is narrating a story with a song about two former comrades and the fallout that they had, forced out of heaven, becoming devils. In the end, the bond that this Bebop team possesses has been wonderfully shown in this episode. Jet came back for Spike and ultimately rescued him from imminent death. And Faye, she stood by Spike's side for days, mending him and waiting for him to wake up. They are the best bounty hunter crew around, and they are not even complete yet. Even with all the seriousness and emotional heaviness of this episode, Cowboy Bebop still maintains its charm through its last scene, ending in a funny note with Spike making fun of Faye's humming, leading to Faye smacking him in the face. What more can you ask for from such a perfect episode.